Okay, so visioning, when you look in the dictionary, it's the act or power of imagination. And I found it interesting, the use of the word power, and it kind of biased my view as to why I said state of agency or like power, because it's something that if you believe in something and you can provide your opinion on something to shape it, that means you have the power to use your imagination for something. And there's a link between visioning and urban vitality. One of the pioneers of urban vitality, he's one of the most quoted authors, his name is Charles Landry, and he's an influential thought leader when it comes to that question of how do we make cities, we increase the vitality of cities. And he identified that future urban success is determined by the creativity of the people who live and run in cities. And he wrote a book called Creative City. So how can cities, with their governance structures and methods, how can they harness the creativity and the culture of their population to foster economic development, social cohesion, and a vibrant urban life? So that was something he wrote more than 24 years ago. And now we have a new tool, which is visual generative AI. And so this is a whole new and unexplored dimension in terms of how we can use this tool in a city to harness human creativity for vitality and competitiveness. So can policymakers and communities use this tool to harness the creativity of their communities and change the spaces around them? And since we're talking a lot about some of the future, what are some of the trends that are happening in cities, there's a few mega trends that will affect Boston and other cities in the world. First, it comes to demographics. The global population will increase by 2 billion, from 8 to 10 billion by 2050. And we are also going to see an aging population, doubling from 12 to 22%. And this is going to affect how cities are designed, how do we consider accessibility measures, how are services delivered. There's also increased urbanization, where by 2050, 70% of the global population will reside in cities compared to 60% today. And even in North America, there are some cities that are declining, but we will see an increase from 83 to 90% of the population living in cities. So there's going to be increased demand for housing, transportation, amenities, and we have to think about things like living affordability, housing affordability, and perhaps rising inequalities as you get more stresses in terms of the demands. Globalization is another one, where we are seeing more a return to local sourcing because of geopolitical instabilities, and people also want to make their communities more resilient, so they don't want to rely on things outside, and they want the money to flow back to their communities. And this is also related to digitalization, whereas before we had these stores, small shops that invested a lot of their profits back into the community. Now we're seeing money being funneled into big tech platforms like Amazon. So we no longer have control over where the money is going and where the money is being invested. And this will only increase with the rise of the platform economy. And many of you mentioned this, and this is something very important. It's last but not least here. The cities have to adapt to climate change. First of all, higher sea levels or increased flooding, but also how they're changing the transportation, whether it's more electrification of transportation and also new sources of renewable energy. And governments are spending huge amounts of money now to make that transition. So talking about the environmental challenges, and I'm happy Anne mentioned that as a major issue. So in November, I participated in a conference here at MIT called Regenerate that Sarah Williams and the LCAU organized. And it's inspired me to think about how we can use visual generative AI to reimagine spaces. And one theme was how we can use science fiction to envision the future of our cities. And they invited a director there called Liam Young. And he's a world-renowned director who came to MIT and gave a talk about Planet City. So basically that's like in 2050, in a speculative world where the whole population is concentrated into one area of the Earth, to support more sustainability and regeneration of the planet. So I found this talk, in a way, it perfectly encapsulates the power of how we can use art, technology, and city design to show us what's possible and reimagine some public spaces like Main Street. So I'll give us 10 minutes to watch and get some food for thought for the later session on visioning. So I'm just gonna see if this technology works.
Over 7,000 languages spoken.
The sound doesn't seem connected to the... If I connect it directly, it won't pick it up on the... It just... The sound is not coming out from the... Is it this one? Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you.
More than 10 billion people. Over 7,000 languages spoken. 90 million songs. 42 billion fruit trees. 900 zettabytes of data. 90 million beehives. 6 million dentists. 142 million square kilometers of protected park, and one city. A planet city. What I've just described is my thought experiment for this world called Planet City. An imaginary city for 10 billion people, the projected global population of the world in 2050. I design environments for the film and television industry, and I believe that by creating imaginary worlds, we can connect emotionally to the ideas and challenges of our future. So we've been creating Planet City in response to the rising red line on the graph of climate change. Because world building and storytelling can do so much more than just visualize this data. They can help us to dramatize data. So in speculative cities, we can immerse ourselves in the various consequences of the decisions we face today. They can be both cautionary tales or roadmaps to an aspirational future. So, I invite you all to join me as we journey along the canals of Planet City. If we listen, we can hear the hum and crackle of flickering blue and red LEDs as they illuminate the lower reaches of the city's farm fields. It smells of soil and hard drives and sweet fruit. A purple sunrise over a new kind of wild. So 5 years ago, seminal biologist Edward O. Wilson proposed a new world he called Half-Earth, a plan to stave off mass extinction by devoting half the surface of the Earth completely to nature, and then consolidating human development to the other half that would remain. And this is where the speculation of Planet City began. And as we started to visualize and design this radical reversal of our planetary sprawl, we soon realized we could actually go much further. In its most provocative form, at the intensity of the densest city that already exists, Planet City could occupy as little as 0.02% Earth. Could we imagine coming to such a global consensus? Radically reversing all of our existing assumptions. what would it take? What would it look like? So our planet city would allow us to surrender almost the entirety of the globe to nature, to return stolen lands and rewild in our wake. A new national park of the world to be visited and tended, not engineered for extraction. The invisible lines that once divided us would fade beneath this planet of trees. In the streets of Planet City, we can prototype some of the necessary lifestyle changes that might be required in order for us to sustain human life. We can explore how such a new world could evolve, not in a singular forced move, but perhaps in a slow, multi-generational retreat from the world we once knew. To build Planet City, we could remine our old cities rather than virgin ground. No new resources would need to be consumed or extracted to build this city. The world's shipping fleet that currently scatters matter ripped from the earth into our malls and storefronts could be reversed and repurposed to bring all this material back together again into the geological strata of our new city. The ghosts of nation-states would give way to new neighborhoods that could be formed around shared cultural practices as we perform new myths of care, belonging, and recreation. If we were to map all the world's celebrations onto a calendar, then we realize that running through Planet City would be this continuous festival procession, dancing across a 365-day loop. Each day, amongst the flittering confetti, it would intersect with a new carnival or culture, endlessly cycling through new colors, costumes, and cacophonies. And to design the systems of Planet City, we traveled to and filmed all of the mega-scaled renewable energy and agriculture sites that currently exist around the world today. The world's largest solar farm in the Mojave Desert, the illuminated indoor farms protecting crops from harsh Siberian winters, the most productive wind energy network in Gansu, China, the world's largest algae farm in Western Australia. These monumental infrastructures are evidence that much of the technologies required to support the generation of our climate are actually already here. And in Planet City, we just remove the political roadblocks or the lack of cultural investment that's currently holding them back, and we visualize them operating at these global scales, but not forgotten out on an industrial periphery, but woven through the very fabric and life of the city itself. So before dawn breaks in Planet City, thousands of autonomous cleaning blades squeak along the solar fields. Waves of mirrors will ripple to rotate to chase the changing light. 1 billion panels collected from all over the world. And the batteries of Planet City will be alive with fish and pink algae, as excess wind and solar power will be used to pump water through the canals to high-altitude holding lakes in the city's upper floors. Power will be stored here as potential energy, rather than resource-intensive lithium batteries. And tides rise and fall as the lights glow and turbines spin. So although wildly provocative, imaginary worlds can be grounded in the real science and technology of the present moment, meaning we can project ourselves into these futures. What would it be like to live here, to fish amongst the city battery lakes, to follow the seasons up through the towers, collecting honey with the Planet City beekeepers, to fall in love amongst the pink algae blooms before harvest? So Planet City is not a proposal, however. It's a provocation. It's a thought experiment that shows us we don't need to tread so hard across the earth. Because if we can get these systems working at this scale of 10 billion, then the only thing stopping us rethinking and consolidating our existing cities is ourselves, our own politics and prejudices, biases and blind spots. So in many ways, all of us have been living in a planetary scaled city all along, We have urbanized our planet from the scale of the cell to the tectonic plate. Planet City is both entirely fictional, but also already here. Simultaneously a challenging image of a possible tomorrow and an urgent illumination of the environmental questions that are facing us today. So, at the end of our journey, as we've been wandering through this sci-fi safari through Planet City, we will return to where we first started, to look back on our own cities again, but with new eyes. This journey has been a call to actively visualize our possible futures, imaginary worlds in which we can collectively shape where we all might want to go next. Thank you.
So, I don't know if anyone has a reaction, if they liked it or they didn't like it. Hey. I was hearing Anne making some sounds in terms of reactions. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I mean, it's so Hollywood, right? And that's he says it right up front. So he's very straightforward about his work, which hugely influences the presentation. But he's talking about connecting in a way that I find very interesting, and boy, would I like to do more of it. But I don't see shared language to do the steps required to get where he is. And that's the piece that worries me the most.
Shared language or values?
Both. I mean, well, if you speak about your values and you speak inside your values, you begin to, well, this goes back to the power, right? You begin to have the power to practice envisioning something other than what we're doing right now. But that connective language is really hard to develop. That value, and we're in such a politically difficult time right now that it's that much more difficult. But I like his ability to put it together. That's what I like. Yes?
Thank you.
It's cohesive and it's coherent, and it's Hollywood.
Yeah, Hollywood is great at the attention economy, grabbing people's attention. So
Yeah.
it's useful in some cases. So we talked about projecting ourselves in the future, and this is a bit of an individual reflection I wanted you to think about, because the idea is we want to do a visioning about the future main streets, and the goal is what themes emerge from the group here in terms of how people dream of a thriving main street. So you can dream of an inclusive main street where it's accessible to all people, or an environmental one. So if it's possible to take maybe 5 minutes to reflect on that. And Manolo, you had a question?
I think some people were asking, like, from the video about like the people in the video. So actually, I knew this guy, or not. He probably doesn't know me, but I saw a different presentation, not the TED Talk. I think it was like a design exposition in Iceland, like last year, I think. But it's the same project, and he's working on some other stuff too. But like the people, I think he left it out unless I missed it, are basically, in the other presentation, he got to a lot more time than he had here. But it's essentially like he discussed the politics of control within the city, and he imagined that like alongside all of the other innovations, there would also be some kind of like laser technology that whoever's in charge would like implement to track people's movements, and essentially those dances would be like people trying to like trick the algorithm to like crash it or something. He sort of
Yeah,
alluded to
that's,
that,
I
but
remember that.
that's sort of the point he was trying to make there, which, I mean, out of context, that is a little weird seeing it again, but that I think that's what he's trying to get at, like the, how control works when you have so many people in such a small area.
It's funny because that's not what I took from that at all. There. I thought they were supposed to be related back to his like 365 days of festival.
Yeah, it could also be that.
It just seemed a little odd to only have if you're talking about a global city, if you only had certain people. Thank you for that context, because that's not how it comes off in this video. It feels like it's more connected to this idea of like cross culture, but it's also like what culture is he portraying at that? I think there was like there was something odd there.
Yes. So I think like most people here, from what it sounds like, I have both good and bad reactions to this little short. Something I'm really curious about is when you collapse everyone to that scale, that might actually change humans, how we like operate in a lot of ways, but also I think would be a disservice to many, because I'm thinking about like indigenous groups who are tied to specific lands. And that would basically mean uprooting them and forcing them into this city. And I think this vision comes very much from like a very let's say Western like city dwelling view of like where it what it means to live in an ideal society, right? Where like like living in a great city is the best thing ever, and for some people it's definitely not the case. So I think that that imposing uniformity across people could have a lot of consequences, I think. And another thing that I think about is like how I think just how the idea of like scale of land, of how that would like really change, let's say, the global communication world. Like for example, I think the most commonly spoken language today is English. But the vast majority of those people who speak it are second language speakers, because it's just such incredible distances, and not everyone lives right next to each other and speak the same language, so English becomes the best. But if you were to shrink everyone to like a single city, I think the most commonly spoken native language is Mandarin, and I think that if let's say 1/10 of your city speaks a language natively, and English it'd be much less than that natively spoken than 1/10. Would Mandarin become the lingua franca, or the most common, like the language everyone tries to use in the city instead? Because it's like, oh well, it's already spoken natively by this many people. Maybe more efficient to like do it for the whole city now. There's also, I think, that a problem with, or a consequence of putting everyone in one city is that it could probably, I think, destroy, not maybe destroy, but like it cause a lot of much more uniformity amongst human society, because everyone's like literally in one city, and
And I think, but this is exactly the kind of reaction he's trying to provoke, because by placing ourselves or imagining a place like that, we start to ask ourselves all these questions. Is it realistic? Is that something we want to do? Like we're thinking, can we put everyone in one space? But no, there's limitations. So the goal when you do a visioning exercise is to say, okay, well, what about if I went radically towards this side, and it gives you a new perspective that you didn't think about. So I think like that's a very interesting reactions, but it's sci-fi. But the goal is it's also making you think about it. I just want to make sure we have enough time for this, and it could be individual reflection, but you can also do it in pairs or in your table to come up with one theme. But the goal is from you on a post-it, just write down the idea. So like you dream of a inclusive, environmental, and explain, a bit, give some context. But it's only one short sentence. I'm going to try to go a bit faster so we can go to the next activity. But do you have any question, Lindsay?
No.
Okay. Okay. Anyone have questions for this? You can grab a coffee and donuts as we prepare this, and I'll take this.
Bye, folks.
So I'm going to put 5 minutes. For the goal is you don't have to also explain what you write. You can just say it, and then we're going to see the themes. So you can just read it. You don't have to like provide explanations. Just to like get a sense of what are the emerging themes that are coming out. Maybe this table seems ready.
Yeah, but not. But
So I'm going to give you the microphone. Who wants to say it here? Just very quickly, you can read it out.
You sure? Okay. Hey, people. Thank you. We would like. I dream of having your attention. I dream of having your attention. Thank you. So what do we really dream about? Well, we dream of a main street where there are no cars. There's pervious pavement. That is not dominant. And that there's lots of green on the, just in the main streets. And there's a lot of small and adorable shops lining it where people can socialize and really can act as third spaces. And we also want it where technology is not dominant. It takes more of a backseat role. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. So what we imagine is we dream of the form of Main Street. Yeah, and where there will be several elements that we mentioned. The first is the streets may have self-driving cars. Yeah, and the second is because we expect people may work at home more, so we do not need that much office space. And in this way, there will be more residential and public space in the city. And the third thing is that because we assume that people may work at home, so actually maybe the city center will disappear in some way. Yeah, because now people need to go to the same CBD to work together. Yeah, but maybe when the city center disappears, just the different areas in the city may be more equal and also spreading.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you. I'll take the...
Yeah.
Anyone here?
Manolo kind of inspired our table with the decapitalized Main Street prompt. And so I said in 2054, I dream of a garden Main Street where people can hang out and eat apples off the trees for free.
Wow. Is it for the same? Okay. Is it? Can I take the post-it? Thank you. If there's the same, I'll just...
You can stick.
Yeah.
In 2054, I dream of an interurban Main Street where adults whose education was severely impacted by COVID can compensate for all aspects of that social and physical trauma.
Thank you very much. We're getting more diverse than I thought. This is exciting. Can I take the post-it?
In 2054, I dream of an engaging Main Street where the community is actually reflected in the businesses, the services, and attractions on the Main Street. So that there's Main Streets where people who work there, shop there, own businesses are really, again, reflective of the community that they're in.
Thank you. Can I steal that?
Hey, folks. I wrote in 2054, I dream of a dynamic Main Street where the infrastructure, features, and entities all support the activities of public rights. And so I listed what I meant by that. It's like performance, protests, political assembly, parade, commerce, just sort of the things that we associate with like the right to public or things that are public would all be found on a main street.
Thank you. So I'm seeing about 3 themes here, and maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. The first one seemed to be, and I think it's both your group and the other group there, where you talk about the a more nature-centric or what's it called? No cars. No cars. Lots of green, small durable shops. So that's like one theme where people are talking about like a green Main Street, environmental, even less technological. The other one is, I guess this is a bit more technological. We're talking about self-driving cars, but it has some aspects of community as well. This one, I think, just the idea of community and civic engagement. But I'm not, is that, you think it fits that? Or there could be 2 separate things as well. It could be more, this is community in terms of how people feel like their local values are reflected, and this could be more related to, you know, the artistic side and like public rights activism, like where people have freedom to express their opinion. And this one is related to education. So we have environmental, technological, community, civic engagement. So we're going to reflect on that a bit. And for the next activity, we're going to work in around these themes.